Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're setting sail for ancient Alexandria, home to a structure that was, well, far more than just a navigational aid. Imagine standing on the deck of a ship, maybe battling a storm, and then piercing through the dark. You see it, this towering light guiding you toward safety. We're talking, of course, about the Lighthouse of Alexandria, known throughout the ancient world simply as the Pharos.
It's a really remarkable subject, because our understanding of this ancient wonder isn't just some fixed historical fact sitting in a textbook. It's more like a living narrative continually being rewoven from all these different threads. You've got the sparse, often awestruck accounts from classical writers. Then you have the incredibly meticulous measurements from medieval Arab scholars. And now, crucially, there's the breathtaking physical evidence being uncovered by modern underwater archaeology. It feels like every single piece of information we unearth, no matter how small it seems, it helps us tell the whole evolving story of this lost marvel, piece by painstaking piece.
That's exactly why this deep dive feels so exciting today. Our mission really is to uncover how the Pharos was so much more than just a light tower. It was this bold declaration of power, a vibrant center of knowledge, and honestly, an economic engine for one of the ancient world's most influential cities. We'll journey through its ambitious conception, its really ingenious design, its many, maybe surprising functions, its long, drawn-out demise, and its incredible enduring legacy. And you'll see how this combined lens, looking through historical texts and modern discovery, lets us piece together the complete narrative of a wonder once lost, but now illuminated anew.
The world that built the wonder, Alexandria in the early Hellenistic age.
Okay, so to truly grasp the significance of the Pharos, we can't just look at the building itself, can we? We need to understand the world it came from, this bustling, ambitious world that brought it into existence. This wasn't just a structure, it was like the physical embodiment of a brand new global order rising right there from the sands of Egypt. What was so special about Alexandria's birth? Why there?
That's absolutely the right place to start, yeah. The Pharos didn't just appear out of thin air. It was really the ultimate strategic capstone to the city of Alexandria itself. And the city's founding, well, that was an act of truly visionary ambition, designed to completely redefine the ancient world's economic and cultural landscape.
And that vision starts way back in 332 BC with Alexander the Great himself. After his sweeping conquest of the Persian Empire, Alexander finds himself on the Egyptian coast of the Mediterranean. And he didn't just pick a spot randomly, did he? He identified this site of immense strategic potential. It was a limestone ridge, perfectly positioned between the open sea and the freshwater Lake Mareotis, right next to a small Egyptian fishing village called Rhodotis.
Right. And that location, it offered everything. A naturally defensible position, immediate access to the vital Mediterranean trade routes, and through a network of canals, a direct link to the unbelievable agricultural wealth of the Nile Valley. Alexander clearly saw this as his grand Hellenistic port city. It was designed to eclipse older Greek trade centers like Naucratis further up the Nile and become the indispensable link between Greece and Egypt.
And it wasn't just about practical city planning, was it? It seems like it was infused with myth-making right from the very beginning, almost setting the stage for Alexandria's destiny as this global hub.
Oh, absolutely. The ancient biographer Plutarch tells this fascinating story. Apparently, Alexander was inspired to found the city after having a vivid dream where Homer himself recited a verse from the Odyssey about Pharos Island, the very island where the lighthouse would later stand. And there's another famous anecdote. When Alexander's chief architect, a guy named Dinocrates of Rhodes, was tracing the city's precise grid layout, they didn't have chalk on site, so they used barley meal. But then this huge flock of birds suddenly descended and just devoured all the grains.
Oh, that doesn't sound like a good sign.
Exactly. Alexander was understandably unsettled by this omen. But his seers, his advisors, they quickly reinterpreted it. They assured him it was actually a sign of unparalleled prosperity, predicting the city would one day nourish people from every corner of the earth. So this foundational myth really underscored Alexandria's destined role as a global crossroads and a center of abundance right from day one.
So Alexander lays this incredible groundwork, this vision. But it's really his successors, the Ptolemies, who turned this promising port into a true capital city. After Alexander's unexpected death in 323 BC, his general, Ptolemy, secured Egypt. And then in 305 BC, he declares himself King Ptolemy, Soter, meaning savior. And this was the start of this formidable dynasty that would rule Egypt for 3 whole centuries. Their project to transform Alexandria wasn't just about building, was it? It was like a deliberate, strategic act of statecraft.
That's a crucial point, yeah. And it perfectly illustrates how everything we know kind of connects to tell the whole story.
Hmm.
One of Ptolemy's most audacious and frankly symbolic moves was effectively hijacking Alexander the Great's funeral procession. He diverted the conqueror's body. Alexander was already considered divine by many, diverted it to Alexandria for interment in this magnificent mausoleum.
Wow, that's bold.
It really was. This wasn't just about choosing a burial site. It was a powerful, calculated, symbolic act. It cemented Alexandria's political and spiritual primacy within that whole burgeoning Hellenistic world. The early Ptolemies, they understood that true, lasting power wasn't just about military might. It was projected through cultural and intellectual dominance, too.
Right, and that's where institutions like the museum, which was basically a shrine to the muses, dedicated to learning, and the legendary Great Library come into play. Ptolemy III and his son Ptolemy II Philadelphus, they established these revolutionary state-funded institutions. And they weren't just dusty repositories for scrolls, were they? They actively attracted the greatest minds from all across the Hellenistic world. People like Euclid, the geometer.
Archimedes, the physicist.
Yeah.
Eratosthenes, the astronomer who calculated the Earth's circumference.
Exactly.
This fostered an environment of, well, unparalleled scientific inquiry and engineering prowess. It created this brain trust that was truly unique in its time.
So in that context, commissioning the pharaohs wasn't just, let's build a big tower.
Yeah, not at all. It was a direct, calculated act of statecraft, a profound statement of dynastic power, standing right alongside the library and Alexander's tomb in terms of importance. It was initiated by Ptolemy I around 300 BC, maybe a bit earlier, and then completed under his son Ptolemy II. And the cost an estimated 800 talents of silver. That was an immense fortune, easily a significant portion of the entire royal treasury at the time.
800 talents. Just staggering.
It was a deliberate, unmistakable display of the Ptolemaic kingdom's immense wealth and its technological superiority. It's really a perfect illustration of a dual project. Just like the library was built to illuminate the world of the mind and preserve knowledge, the Lighthouse was designed to illuminate the world of commerce and navigation. Both secured the Ptolemies' legacy for centuries to come. You see how the pieces fit?
Absolutely, it tells a much richer story. But that huge investment, it wasn't simply for show, right? I mean, the pharaohs was also born out of a really urgent practical necessity. From what we understand, the Egyptian Mediterranean coast is notoriously low, flat, largely featureless, makes it incredibly difficult for sailors to identify landmarks or even figure out where they are.
Exactly. And add to that, the approaches to Alexandria's harbor were riddled with treacherous shoals and submerged reefs, really dangerous waters. For a city whose entire existence, its prosperity, depended completely on robust maritime trade, this geographical reality, well, it posed an existential threat.
Okay, so that leads to a fascinating question you touched on earlier. How did this foreign dynasty, the Macedonian Ptolemies, manage to rule a deeply traditional Egyptian society while also securing its vital economic future?
And the Pharos, in its very essence, offers a really compelling answer. The Ptolemies had already made massive investments in Alexandria's commercial infrastructure. They built the Heptastadion, this colossal causeway over 1,200 meters long, connecting the mainland to Pharos Island itself. This amazing engineering feat effectively created two distinct world-class harbors. The Great Harbor for international trade on one side and the Port of Eunostus to the west.
Two harbors, right?
Yeah, and Alexandria rapidly overtook older trade hubs like Tyre. It became the undisputed commercial nexus of the entire Mediterranean. It controlled the flow of immense quantities of exports, everything from the vital Egyptian grain, which would later feed Rome, to papyrus, exquisite textiles, luxury goods, flowing across these vast trade networks.
So if the harbors and the causeway were the arteries of this economic machine.
Then the Pharos was truly the final critical component.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a nice to have, it was an utterly essential investment. It mitigated the natural dangers of the coastline and ensured safe, reliable, 24-hour access to the city's bustling ports. By guiding ships safely to harbor, protecting them from shipwreck on those reefs, the lighthouse literally underwrote the entire commercial enterprise upon which Ptolemaic wealth was built.
So that staggering cost, the 800 talents, suddenly looks different. It wasn't really an extravagance.
No, it was a profoundly sound economic calculation, a one-time, albeit monumental, capital expenditure designed to protect and enhance a continuous and vastly larger stream of revenue. It was the technological fix for the final variable in making Alexandria the greatest and wealthiest city in the ancient world.
And the parallel development of the pharaohs and the library, it really shows that sophisticated dual nature of Ptolemaic statecraft you mentioned.
Precisely. The sheer scale and ambition of the Pharos, this man-made mountain of white stone, It consciously echoed the monumental building traditions of the Egyptian pharaohs. It evoked the awe-inspiring pyramids, establishing a kind of perceived continuity of divine authority, the power to command the landscape itself. Yet at the same time, as a masterpiece of Hellenistic engineering, a pragmatic tool for navigation and an aid to scientific observation, it appealed directly to Greek values, rationalism, technology, intellectual inquiry.
So it's speaking two languages at once, almost.
Exactly. The pharaohs and the library were two sides of the same coin. Each projected this new hybrid Greco-Egyptian identity, simultaneously anciently powerful and modernly sophisticated. It shows how everything they built, every piece, had multiple layers of meaning and purpose, telling that whole story.
Anatomy of a colossus. The architecture and engineering of the pharaohs.
Okay, so the Ptolemies had the grand vision, the immense wealth, and this overwhelming practical need. But the sheer scale of this project must have presented just monumental challenges. How did they even begin to build something of this magnitude? And what were the major design principles they used? This is where it gets really interesting as we start piecing together its physical form from, well, sometimes conflicting historical accounts, and as we'll get into later, those crucial archaeological finds from the seabed.
Yeah, this is the detective work of history, isn't it? Trying to reconstruct this physical form. And despite discrepancies in measurements and some minor details across the various sources, a remarkably consistent picture does emerge. It was a sophisticated, multi-stage structure, both an aesthetic marvel and a triumph of structural engineering for its time. Its design wasn't arbitrary at all. It was a calculated solution to the unprecedented challenge of achieving immense height and stability on a relatively small island in what we now know as a seismically active region.
Right. And one of the most consistent features, the one everyone seems to describe, is that distinctive three-tiered tapering form, like a ziggurat almost.
Exactly like a ziggurat.
Oh,
And that wasn't just for looks. It was a brilliant engineering solution. It provided this wide, incredibly stable base while allowing for a graceful reduction in mass and wind resistance as the tower soared upwards. Very clever design.
okay, let's break down those tiers. The first one, the lowest level.
Right, that was a massive square prism. The base was reportedly about 30 by 30 meters, so roughly 100 feet per side. Huge. And it rose to a considerable height, forming the functional heart of the whole structure. Crucially, it wasn't solid stone. It contained numerous internal chambers.
What were they used for?
Well, they likely served as administrative offices for the lighthouse staff, maybe barracks for the soldiers who guarded it, and even stables probably for the pack animals used to haul the fuel up. Its flat roof served as this vast terrace, which apparently became a very popular observation platform for tourists who journeyed from all over to see this wonder.
Okay, so above that massive square base.
Rising from the center of that platform was the second tier, an elegant octagonal tower, 8-sided. This section acted as an architectural transition, mediating gracefully between that powerful square base and the slender cylindrical top. Shifting from 4 to 8 sides is a classic technique, not just for aesthetics, but also to distribute the structural loads more evenly and soften the building's profile against the wind. And that multifaceted design, it likely contributed significantly to its resilience against the earthquakes that plagued the region. This stage might have even had a smaller balcony, offering more stunning views.
And then the top tier, the business end, so to speak.
Exactly. The third and final tier was circular or cylindrical. This contained the lighthouse's most vital component, the beacon chamber itself, where that perpetual fire burned. This uppermost section was likely topped by an open cupola, maybe supported by columns. This would allow the dense smoke to escape while still offering some protection to the flame from strong winds or rain.
And getting up there, how did access work in this colossal structure? It must have been complex.
It was brilliantly designed for efficiency. A long, vaulted external ramp led visitors and supplies up to the main entrance, likely partway up the first tier. From there, a truly vast internal spiral ramp, reportedly wide enough for 2 beasts of burden, like donkeys, to pass side by side, wound its way up through that massive square first tier.
Wow, an internal ramp for animals.
Yes. It wasn't just for show, it was the essential logistical artery. It allowed a continuous supply of fuel to be hauled up to storage rooms high in the tower. Then, from the top of that first massive stage, internal staircases provided access for the keepers and maybe some intrepid visitors to the upper 2 levels and the beacon chamber itself. There might even have been a shaft with a winch or some kind of dumbwaiter system for hoisting smaller loads, or maybe even people. It's like an ancient skyscraper with its own built-in logistics network.
Amazing. And the materials, what was it actually made of?
Well, What truly stands out here is how the choice of materials tells us so much about the cutting-edge engineering of the Ptolemaic era. It was constructed primarily from massive blocks of light-colored local limestone. This would have given it a brilliant, almost dazzling white appearance, really standing out against the blue sea and sky. Now, some ancient sources, probably with a bit of poetic license, described it as being faced with white marble. But the archaeological evidence mostly points to high-quality local limestone.
Okay, limestone. What else?
Crucially, the interior was reportedly lined with lead. That sounds odd, but it was a practical measure to protect the masonry from the corrosive effects of sea air and moisture. Really important for longevity.
That makes sense. And for the really heavy-duty parts.
For those key structural elements that demanded immense strength and durability, the builders strategically imported Aswan granite, much harder, denser stone. This was used for critical components like the massive lintels and jambs of the monumental entrance doorway. And underwater archaeology, as we'll discuss more later, has actually confirmed the extensive use of this imported granite. We found the pieces, tangible proof validating the texts.
Wow. That connection between text and physical evidence is key.
Absolutely. And the 12th century Arab geographer al-Idrisi made a particularly crucial observation. He noted that molten lead was used as a mortar, or maybe a filling agent, between the masonry blocks, especially near the base. Now, this wasn't just simple mortar. It was an advanced engineering choice. It would have provided an exceptionally powerful bond between the massive stones, but it also likely imparted a critical degree of seismic resilience. It allowed the entire structure to flex slightly, to absorb and dissipate the energy from minor tremors, rather than just cracking or crumbling.
Like ancient shock absorbers.
Kind of, yeah. And the entire edifice, of course, rested on a solid stone foundation built right onto the rocky islet of Pharos. Some accounts even suggest the foundations went deep into the bedrock beneath the water. Plus, a protective seawall encircled the site, acting as a crucial barrier against the relentless force of the waves. This wasn't just about building tall, it was about building to last in a really challenging marine environment.
Okay, let's talk height. This seems to be one of the most debated aspects, even today. How tall was this thing?
It really is. Ancient and medieval writers offer a wide range of figures. Some conservative estimates put it at least 100 meters, maybe 330 feet. Others go much higher, spectacular claims reaching 120, 140 meters or even more. What's certain is that for most of its existence, it was unquestionably one of the tallest man-made structures in the world. Only the Great Pyramid of Giza was taller for a very long time.
So why the big discrepancies in the numbers?
Several factors are likely at play. Different, often imprecise, ancient units of measurement were used. There's the understandable tendency to exaggerate for dramatic effect. And critically, the physical state of the lighthouse at the exact moment someone observed it. Later writers were describing a structure that was already over 1,000 years old. It had likely suffered damage and undergone repairs from multiple earthquakes over its long life.
Right, so they weren't all seeing the same building, essentially.
Exactly. For instance, the 1st century AD Jewish historian Josephus noted it was visible from 55 kilometers away, which certainly implies significant height. Pliny the Elder, also 1st century AD, just called it a work of wonderful construction, no specific number. But then you jump forward centuries. Al-Idrisi, in 1154 AD, estimated its height at around 162 meters. That's over 530 feet, one of the tallest estimates. He was likely seeing a repaired structure, maybe with additions.
Okay, and compare that to al-Balawi.
Right, al-Balawi, writing just a decade later in 1166 AD, gave a much more detailed and maybe more reliable measurement. He reported it was over 77 meters just to the first platform, with a total height of about 111.75 meters based on his figures. And he was incredibly meticulous. Apparently, he brought a weighted string specifically to take his measurements.
That's dedication.
It really is. And this is exactly how we piece together the truth from these imperfect, fragmented sources. Modern scholarly consensus, after synthesizing all these historical accounts and doing rigorous engineering analysis, tends to place the height in a more plausible range, probably between 103 and 118 meters, around 340 to 390 feet.
Still incredibly tall.
Absolutely enormous. While a single definitive figure might remain elusive, a height within that range seems the most likely reconstruction. It aligns well with al-Balawi's detailed work and modern engineering assessments of what was feasible. It beautifully illustrates the challenge, but also the reward, of historical research, how putting all the pieces together, even the contradictory ones, tells the fuller story.
And beyond its sheer size, the Pharos wasn't just a functional tower, was it? It was decorated, a work of art in itself.
Oh, definitely. At its very apex, it was crowned by a colossal bronze statue. Now, the exact identity of this figure is debated in the ancient sources. Candidates include Zeus the Savior, or Poseidon, the god of the sea, or maybe Alexander the Great himself, or even Ptolemy identified as the sun god Helios.
So, quite a few
Yes, and
possibilities.
it's highly probable the statue was replaced or maybe re-identified over the centuries to suit the ideologies of whoever was ruling at the time. We also see on Roman coins minted in Alexandria depictions of four smaller statues of Tritons, Poseidon's merman sons. They're shown at the corners of that big first-tier terrace, each blowing a conch shell trumpet, as if announcing arrivals to the harbor.
Very grand. And what about inscriptions? There's a famous one associated with the architect Sostratus.
Ah, yes, the legend of Sostratus. This is where it gets really interesting. The most famous inscription is the one reported by Strabo. Sostrat, son of Dexthenes of Candos, on behalf of all mariners, to the savior gods. Now, the identity of these savior gods is deliberately ambiguous, perhaps. They could be Castor and Pollux, the traditional divine protectors of sailors, or maybe a joint dedication to Zeus and Poseidon. Or, most cleverly, it could be a subtle double entendre referring to the deified Ptolemy Sostra and his wife Berenice, who are also referred to as savior gods. Very clever political maneuvering there, potentially. And the story surrounding Sostratus himself is just captivating. The 2nd century AD satirist Lucian claimed that Ptolemy II, wanting all the glory, forbade Sostratus from putting his own name on the monument. So the ingenious architect, supposedly, carved his dedication deep into the stone blocks themselves. Then he covered it all up with a layer of plaster, and on that, he painted a superficial inscription honoring King Ptolemy. Sostratus, confident in the power of time and weather, trusted that eventually the plaster would erode, revealing his true name for posterity.
That's an amazing story, true or not.
Whether it's literally factual or just a good story, it reveals something profound, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About monumental works. That inherent tension between the political power that commissions them and the creative genius that actually brings them into being. It transforms the building into a narrative about ambition, pride, the desire for legacy, and the enduring power of creation over mere patronage. It adds another layer to how we understand the pharaohs.
It absolutely does. And modern archaeology has added even more to this picture, right? With statues found underwater.
Yes, another crucial layer. In the waters right near the site, divers found these colossal statues of a king and queen. They've been identified as Ptolemy II and his powerful wife's sister Arsinoe II, significantly depicted as the goddess Isis. These magnificent statues are believed to have originally stood on grand pedestals right at the base of the lighthouse, facing the harbor entrance, like imposing figures greeting everyone arriving by sea. More tangible evidence of the pharaohs' sheer grandeur and its symbolic weight. Everything contributes to the picture.
The light of civilization. Function, technology, and myth.
Okay, so beyond the truly impressive architecture, the Pharos was clearly this hub of constant activity. It seems it transcended its primary function, becoming a beacon not just for ships, but in a broader sense, for civilization itself. It evolved into this truly multifunctional monument.
Absolutely. It wasn't just a navigational aid. It was a military asset, a scientific laboratory, and even a major global tourist attraction back then. And the technology it employed, particularly that legendary mirror, inspired this mix of awe, fear, and enduring myths that have captivated imaginations for millennia, adding more layers to how we understand its role in the world.
Let's start with the core function.
Hmm.
The light itself. How did it work?
The heart of the Pharos, the light that gave it its purpose, was generated by an enormous open fire, probably a furnace of some kind, kept burning constantly at the top, inside that cylindrical third tier. This fire burned both day and night, producing a perpetual beacon. By day, you'd see a visible column of smoke from afar. By night, a brilliant guiding flame.
Keeping that fire going 24/7 must have been a huge undertaking.
Oh, immense. The logistical operation required speaks volumes about the organization of the Ptolemaic state. The fuel itself was most likely oil or maybe resinous wood. Timber was scarce and highly valuable in Egypt, remember? Tons of this fuel had to be transported daily up the tower's vast internal ramp.
What about those donkeys we mentioned?
Probably by carts or wagons pulled by pack animals like donkeys or mules, yeah. They could efficiently get up that wide, gently sloping ramp to the top of the first square tier. From there, the fuel was then likely hoisted up to the beacon chamber itself, probably via an internal shaft equipped with a winch or some kind of clever dumbwaiter system. This constant, laborious process highlights the sheer scale of state resources and meticulous organization needed. It was effectively the ancient equivalent of a power plant running nonstop.
And then, of course, there's the mirror, the legendary mirror. What do the sources say about that?
Right. The mirror. Many historical accounts, especially from later Arab writers, describe this truly remarkable piece of technology at the tower's apex. It was a large, highly polished metal mirror, almost certainly crafted from a sheet of curved, meticulously polished bronze, not glass. True glass mirrors of that scale weren't really available then.
And its purpose, just to make the light brighter.
Primarily, yes. Its
Right.
practical function was to amplify the beacon's light. Acting as a parabolic reflector, it would have efficiently collected the light from the fire and projected it outwards in a concentrated beam. This would have dramatically increased its effective range. During the day, the same mirror could be strategically angled to reflect sunlight, acting as a bright daytime marker.
How far could the light actually be seen? The sources vary wildly, don't they?
They really do. Some credible estimates put the range at 47 to 56 kilometers. That's roughly 30 to 35 miles, which is about the distance to the horizon from a structure that high. But then you get these more fantastical claims of 100 miles or even more. Likely exaggerations fueled by the sheer awe the Lighthouse inspired.
And this powerful, almost magical-seeming technology, it gave rise to legends, didn't it? Like the death ray myth.
Exactly. That's one of the most enduring legends. Several accounts, particularly in Arab folklore, claim the mirror could be angled to focus the sun's rays into an intense beam, capable of incinerating enemy ships before they could even reach the harbor.
Like Archimedes at Syracuse, supposedly. Is that even possible?
Well, the principle of a solar concentrator is scientifically sound. Archimedes' story might be apocryphal too, but the physics works on a small scale. However, focusing sunlight with enough intensity to actually burn a moving target miles away at sea with the technology of the time. Highly, highly improbable. It's generally, and quite reasonably, dismissed by historians as a captivating myth.
But the myth itself tells us something, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's where it becomes symbolically significant. It reveals how deeply the pharaohs permeated the ancient psyche. To ancient observers, the sheer power and range of the beacon must have seemed miraculous, almost supernatural. And it's a common human tendency, isn't it, to extrapolate from great power to destructive capability. What can guide can also harm. So this death ray myth transformed the pharaohs in the popular imagination. It went from a tool of safety to a potent symbol of Alexandria's formidable technological prowess and military might. Whether the Ptolemies intentionally propagated it or it just arose from popular awe, the story functioned as powerful propaganda. It enhanced the city's mystique, maybe deterred some enemies. It really illustrates how readily we turn advanced tech into fantastical fears or symbols of immense power, even today.
Okay, so beyond the light in the myths, the Pharos was clearly far more than just a tower with a fire. Its height and location gave it other roles.
Definitely. It evolved into a truly multi-purpose facility. One of its most important secondary functions was undoubtedly as a military watchtower. With that commanding, unobstructed view over the Mediterranean, the tower's observation platforms were the city's critical first line of defense. Sentinels could spot approaching enemy fleets long before they posed a real threat.
Giving them time to prepare.
Exactly. The strategic value was immense. And we have testimony from none other than Julius Caesar himself. In his account of the Alexandrian War in 48 BC, he doesn't talk about its beauty. His civil wars gives a general's cold, pragmatic assessment. He explicitly notes that gaining control of the Tower of Great Height was absolutely critical for controlling the harbor and, by extension, subduing the Ptolemaic forces and securing the city. His perspective adds another piece, showing how everything we know, even from a military viewpoint, informs the complete story.
And in a city like Alexandria, so devoted to science and learning, it seems inevitable it would be used for research too.
Almost certainly. That stable, high-altitude platform, far removed from the dust and bustle of the city below, was an ideal spot for astronomical observation. It created this perfect synergy with the nearby museum. Scholars and astronomers could use the tower to study the stars and planets with unprecedented clarity for the time. It's even believed the pharaohs played a crucial, though perhaps indirect, role in the work of people like Eratosthenes. His remarkably accurate calculation of the Earth's circumference might have relied on precise observations made from its summit.
Wow. And finally, it was a tourist trap.
Essentially, yes. We can't overlook that the Pharos was one of the premier tourist attractions of the entire ancient world. Its status as one of the original seven wonders ensured it drew curious travelers from across the known world. And the structure seems to have been designed with visitors in mind. That grand external ramp, the internal staircases leading to observation decks. Ancient writers even mention that food and souvenirs were sold to visitors on that broad terrace atop the first tier, like an ancient viewing platform with concessions.
That's amazing.
And its image was everywhere, widely reproduced on coins, glass vessels, mosaics. It became the definitive icon of Alexandria, much like, say, the Eiffel Tower for modern Paris.
So it really was this blend.
Yeah.
Military outpost, research facility, ancient theme park, all rolled into one monumental structure.
Exactly. It truly illustrates the integrated, multifunctional nature of great structures in ancient societies, where purpose often extended far beyond the primary design.
A millennium of service and a slow demise.
Okay, so a structure that stands for over 1,600 years. That's just an astonishing testament to incredible engineering and resilience. But even the grandest wonders eventually yield to the relentless forces of time and nature. And the Pharos' destruction, it wasn't a sudden cataclysmic event, was it? It was more like a slow, dramatic chronicle. A war of attrition waged mainly by the Earth itself.
That's a key distinction, yeah. Its eventual demise wasn't one single catastrophic moment. It was a long, slow process of decay. A relentless series of powerful earthquakes, spread over several centuries, gradually dismantled the Colossus piece by piece, until all that remained was rubble and memory. It's a story of extraordinary resilience followed by, well, inevitable decay.
So, after Rome annexed Egypt in 30 BC, what happened to the Pharos? Did it lose importance?
Not at all initially. It seamlessly transitioned from being a symbol of Ptolemaic power to an icon of the Roman Empire. Its practical function continued, guiding ships into what was now a vital Roman port, the breadbasket of the empire, really. But its fame also meant it served as much as a day marker and a powerful symbol of Alexandria's continuing grandeur within the Roman world. And its enduring importance is confirmed by its frequent appearance on Roman imperial coins, struck right there at the Alexandrian Mint during the reigns of emperors like Domitian, Trajan, Hadrian, all the way to Commodus. That's nearly a century, from 81 to 192 AD.
And it survived some major disasters during that time. I remember reading about a huge tsunami.
Yes. The exceptional robustness of its original construction was vividly proven in 365 AD. The lighthouse notably withstood a massive tsunami. This devastating wave, triggered by a powerful earthquake off Crete, ravaged coastal areas across the eastern Mediterranean, including parts of Alexandria itself. But despite the widespread destruction elsewhere, the tower survived. A powerful testament to its deep foundations and masterful engineering. It continued to operate throughout the Byzantine period, serving Constantinople's trade interests. Though, as Alexandria's political and economic importance gradually waned relative to the new imperial capital, it's highly likely that its maintenance became, shall we say, less of an immediate priority for the imperial treasury. Maybe repairs weren't as frequent or thorough.
Right. Then came the Arab conquest in 642 AD. How did the new rulers view the pharaohs?
Following the conquest, the lighthouse, now known in Arabic as Al-Manara, was integrated into the burgeoning Islamic world. It wasn't destroyed, it became a celebrated landmark. It was continuously marveled at by Muslim travelers and geographers, and its distinctive three-tiered form is widely believed to have been a significant architectural influence on the design of many early Islamic minarets throughout the region. A fascinating architectural echo.
Interesting. And there's a legend about its destruction around this time, too, involving Byzantine spies.
Yes, that popular, though certainly apocryphal, legend. First reported by the 10th century historian al-Masudi, it tells this captivating tale of Byzantine treachery. A cunning eunuch agent of the Byzantine emperor supposedly infiltrated the court of the caliph. Gaining trust, he eventually got permission to search for hidden treasure at the tower's base. But the search was just a ruse, designed to cunningly undermine the foundations, causing the pharaohs to collapse.
But that's not what actually happened.
Definitely not. Numerous reliable accounts confirm the lighthouse was still standing and functioning for another 600 years after this supposed event. But the story itself is historically valuable. It vividly reflects the ongoing geopolitical rivalry and deep mistrust between the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic Caliphate at the time. It profoundly illustrates how even the demise, or the imagined demise, of a great monument can become interwoven with political narratives and reflect contemporary anxieties. Another piece telling the story of its perception.
So over the centuries, as it inevitably suffered damage, rulers kept repairing it.
Yes, successive rulers made repairs and adaptations to keep it functioning, or at least standing. For instance, after a significant earthquake probably in the 8th or 9th century damaged the uppermost section, the Fatimid-era governor Ahmed ibn Tulun is said to have built a small domed mosque on its summit around 875 AD. This effectively replaced the original beacon chamber or any ruined statuary. It symbolically and practically integrated the ancient wonder into the religious and cultural life of the flourishing Islamic city.
But ultimately, the repairs couldn't keep up with the real cause of its demise.
Exactly. The ultimate end for the Pharos was sealed by its geography. It was located in a highly seismically active zone, vulnerable to powerful tremors from two major tectonic boundaries, the African-Arabian and Red Sea Rift zones. The destruction wasn't sudden, it was protracted, gradual, a series of devastating blows spread across nearly 6 centuries.
Can we track those final blows?
We can, thanks to historical records. The first major documented earthquake to inflict serious visible damage occurred in 796 AD. Large cracks appeared. Some sources suggest the top cylindrical story was lost then. Then further significant quakes hit in 951 and even more severely in 956 AD. That 956 quake is specifically documented as causing the structural collapse at the top 20 meters or so of the tower.
So it was shrinking, basically.
Bit by bit, yes. Despite ongoing repairs and the remarkable resilience of its core structure, it was fighting a losing battle against these continuous seismic forces. The truly fatal blows came in the 14th century. A massive earthquake, centered near Crete in 1303, caused catastrophic damage across the region. By all accounts, it dealt a devastating blow to the Pharos. Then another powerful tremor in 1323 seems to have completed the collapse, finally reducing the once mighty tower to essentially a heap of unidentifiable ruins.
And we have eyewitness accounts of this final phase.
We do, and they are absolutely crucial for piecing together this final part of the story. The famed Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta provides two invaluable snapshots. When he first visited Alexandria in 1326, he found the lighthouse in a ruinous state, certainly. But he explicitly noted he was still able to enter its base and climb up to what he called the doorway. Okay, so still somewhat accessible.
Right.
But when he returned for a second visit, just 23 years later in 1349, he found it had fallen into so ruinous a condition that it was impossible to enter it or to climb up to the doorway. His two distinct visits pinpoint the final irreversible collapse to this remarkably precise 23-year window. That's how we reconstruct the detailed story of its slow, inexorable decline, using every piece of historical evidence available.
It's incredible to imagine watching a modern skyscraper slowly crumble over centuries. The resilience, even in decay, is astounding.
It truly is. And for over a century after that final collapse, the ruins just lay there, a massive mound of rubble on its ancient platform. The final physical traces of the third longest surviving wonder of the ancient world were effectively erased in 1480. In that year, the Mamluk Sultan of Egypt, Al-Ashraf Sifal-Din Quaid Bey, was worried about the growing threat of the Ottoman Turks. He needed to fortify Alexandria, so he ordered the site of the Pharos ruins to be completely cleared.
To build something else.
Exactly. To build the citadel of Quaid Bey, the fortress that still stands there today. And this act marked the final transformation of the site, from a beacon of welcome and commerce to a bastion of defense. Crucially, the builders of the new citadel didn't just clear the site. They brilliantly repurposed the fallen stones and massive marble blocks from the ancient wonder. They used them to construct the very walls of the new fort.
So parts of the Pharos are literally in the citadel walls.
Yes. Today, visitors to the citadel of Quaid Bey can quite literally see these massive, ancient granite and limestone blocks from the Pharos, visibly embedded in its 15th century walls. It's a tangible, enduring link between the modern city and its legendary past. It truly illustrates how history literally builds upon itself, physically and metaphorically. Another layer of the story, preserved in stone.
Echoes from the past. A historiographical survey.
Okay, so after hearing all that incredible history, the construction, the function, the long decline, the question naturally arises, how do we actually know all this stuff? The story of the Pharos is such a powerful demonstration of how historians and archaeologists meticulously piece together the whole story from all these disparate, often challenging sources. It really is like a detective story spanning millennia, built on written accounts over 1,500 years.
Exactly. And those texts aren't just passive containers of facts. They're historical artifacts themselves, each one shaped by the culture, the inherent biases, the specific purposes of its author. A critical look at these sources reveals this evolving perception of the Pharos. It goes from being a contemporary marvel in the Greco-Roman world to this ancient, almost mythical inheritance for later Arab scholars. Understanding these different perspectives is absolutely key to unlocking the full narrative.
Let's start with the earliest ones, the classical lens. The Greek and Roman writers, what do they tell us?
These earliest descriptions come from writers who saw it as an astonishing marvel of their own time, the Hellenistic and Roman periods. Their accounts, while invaluable for giving us that initial picture, are often quite, laconic, brief. They focus mostly on its grandeur and its function within their contemporary world. The Greek geographer Strabo, for instance, visited Alexandria around 24 BC. His Geographica is one of our most important early sources. He notes the admirable construction, mentions white marble or maybe limestone, multiple stories, its location. And crucially, he's the first one to record that famous dedication by Sostratus, the architect, to the savior gods.
Okay, Strabo. Who else from that era?
Well, building on that, you have the Roman writer Pliny the Elder. In his huge 1st century AD encyclopedia, Natural History, he corroborates Strabo's account about Sostratus and, importantly, mentions that huge construction cost 800 talents. Pliny's testimony is particularly vital because he's one of the very first to explicitly describe its true function as a proper lighthouse, mentioning fires at night used to warn ships and guide them right into the harbor.
And then there's Lucian, the satirist, with the story about Sostratus hiding his name.
Right, Lucian of Samosata, writing in the 2nd century AD. He gives us that famous, though almost certainly apocryphal, tale. Whether it's true or not, the story itself offers a fascinating glimpse into the ancient world's culture of patronage, the intense pursuit of fame, the whole contest for lasting legacy. It shows us how deeply people thought about these monuments and the mark they left.
And Caesar's perspective, purely military, you said.
Absolutely. A distinctly different, starkly pragmatic viewpoint. Julius Caesar, in his account of the Alexandrian War of 48 BC, offers zero architectural praise, no musings on its beauty. Instead, his civil wars gives a general's cold, calculated assessment. He stresses its immense strategic importance, noting that controlling the tower of great height was essential for controlling the harbor and, by extension, the whole city. So these classical sources, taken together, they give us that contemporary awe, insights into purpose, military strategy, but often lack the really detailed architectural specifics we wish we had.
Okay, fast forward several centuries. We get the view from the Arab world. Geographers, travelers. What new information do they bring?
Centuries later, yes, a new set of observers provided what are now considered the most detailed descriptions we have. For Arab geographers, scholars, travelers crossing the region, maybe on pilgrimage to Mecca, Alexandria was a common and important stop. And its great almanara, the lighthouse, was an object of intense curiosity and meticulous study. Their accounts, compiled much later, are generally way more focused on measurement and precise architectural detail than their Roman predecessors were.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. The 10th century historian Al-Masudi, for example, wrote that the seaward side had an inscription dedicated to Zeus. He's also our key source for that compelling, though legendary tale of the Byzantine agent sabotaging it, a story reflecting the political tensions of his era, as we discussed. Then, in 1154, the renowned geographer Al-Idrisi actually visited. He meticulously noted specific construction details, like the use of lead as a filling agent between the massive blocks at the base. He also provided one of the tallest height estimates, around 162 meters.
And then the most valuable one, al-Balawi.
Yes, the single most valuable architectural account, a real treasure for historians. It comes from Abu Haggag Yusuf ibn Muhammad el-Balawi el-Andalusi, a traveler from Andalusia who visited in 1166. With the meticulous eye of maybe a builder himself, al-Balawi took it upon himself to precisely measure the structure. He came prepared. Marked cord, ink, paper. He recorded the exact dimensions of the interior shaft, the ramps, the precise layout of rooms on each floor. His incredibly detailed description of the 3 tiers and his painstaking measurements form the absolute basis for most modern reconstructions.
That's incredible detail.
It really is. And finally, you have the great Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta, acting as the lighthouse's last historical witness. His 2 distinct visits, in 1326 and 1349, precisely bookend that final collapse. His clear descriptions of its state, first damaged but enterable, then 23 years later, completely impassable, provide an invaluable, precisely dated record of its final moments. These Arab sources together give us incredible architectural detail, but of the structure and its later life. They reveal how it was viewed then as this ancient, almost mythical inheritance. It's a crucial layer in the whole story.
So synthesizing all these incredibly disparate sources separated by centuries, different cultures, different purposes, that must be a huge challenge for scholars. Classical accounts are brief, focused on wonder. Arab accounts are detailed, but describe an ancient, altered building. How do you reconcile these seemingly contradictory accounts to build one coherent picture?
That's the real puzzle, isn't it? It's fascinating how we confront these contradictions. The different summit statues, the big height discrepancies, Al-Idrisi's estimate being so much larger than al-Balawi's detailed measurements, imply the fantastical nature of the mirror. It raises that crucial question for historians. How do we possibly tell the whole story when the pieces don't seem to fit together perfectly?
Right.
A fundamental aspect of interpretation is just understanding that each author was describing the pharaohs of their specific time. Strabo saw a relatively new structure, maybe only 200 years old. In stark contrast, al-Balawi and Ibn Battuta saw a 1,400-year-old monument. It had endured centuries of earthquakes, extensive repairs, significant alterations like adding that Islamic-style dome. They weren't seeing the original Ptolemaic design pristine.
So it's like seeing snapshots of the same building across centuries, each snapshot showing changes.
Exactly. A comprehensive understanding truly requires layering these accounts, using the precise, detailed measurements from the Arab writers to flesh out the grand but often vague descriptions of the Romans, but always acknowledging that vast gulf of time and context that separates them. It really is like building a 3D model with incomplete blueprints drawn from different eras. Each piece contributes something unique to the overall historical puzzle. Every single piece of information, no matter how small or seemingly contradictory, contributes to that overall narrative, allowing us to see the whole story emerge bit by bit.
The sunken wonder, modern rediscovery and research.
Okay, so for centuries, the pharaohs really only existed in books, in legends, maybe in those stones reused in the Cape Bay Citadel. But thanks to incredible advances in technology and, frankly, a lot of dedicated divers, its physical form has been dramatically reborn from the seabed. This adds entirely new, tangible chapters to its story.
It really does. The rediscovery of its ruins on the seabed of Alexandria's eastern harbor has fundamentally transformed how we understand the pharaohs. It's shifted the study from being purely text-based to one firmly grounded in tangible archaeological evidence. This modern quest, using cutting-edge marine technology, has created this entirely new, incredibly fruitful dialogue between those ancient written accounts and the monument's actual physical remains.
When did this underwater exploration really start?
Well, the first tantalizing hint came back in 1968. A UNESCO-sponsored expedition led by the pioneering marine archaeologist Honor Frost explored the waters right off the Cape Bay Citadel. Frost's team confirmed the existence of massive submerged ruins, clearly part of an enormous ancient structure, very likely the lighthouse itself. However, because the area was designated a military zone back then, and there was a general lack of specialized resources for such a huge underwater undertaking, further systematic exploration was put on hold for decades.
So the big breakthrough came later.
Much later. The moment the pharaohs truly re-entered the physical world was in 1994. The Egyptian government was planning to build a new concrete breakwater to protect the citadel, which would have destroyed anything underneath. So they called in this remarkable French archaeologist, Jean-Yves Empereur, and his team from the Centre d'études Alexandrines CE-Alex, a leading French institute dedicated to Alexandria's heritage. Diving into the harbor, Empereur's team initiated the first truly systematic underwater excavation of the pharaoh's site. This was pivotal. It brought the lighthouse back from legend into physical science, giving us concrete evidence to add to the texts.
And what did they find down there? Just rubble?
Oh, much more than rubble. What Emperor's team found was absolutely staggering. Yeah. Scattered across the seafloor lay literally thousands of architectural elements, perfectly preserved by the saltwater environment. Over the course of their monumental work, they meticulously cataloged over 3,300 individual pieces. Among the most significant finds were these colossal blocks of S1 granite, weighing between 49 and 60 tons each.
60 tons?
Huge. And many were clearly identifiable as the jambs and lintels of that truly monumental doorway that once graced the tower's facade. Direct physical evidence matching the descriptions.
Amazing. But you mentioned something even more surprising earlier, about finding older artifacts.
Yes, and here's where it gets truly fascinating, connecting back to that idea of layers of history. Many artifacts found right there at the lighthouse site were actually older than the lighthouse itself. The team identified some 30 sphinxes, 5 impressive obelisks, numerous columns bearing carvings from the reign of Ramesses II, a pharaoh who lived over 1,000 years before the pharaohs was even conceived.
So what does that mean?
When we connect this to the bigger picture, it provides incredibly compelling physical evidence for a practice we knew about from texts, but now saw confirmed in stone.
Yeah.
The Ptolemies had quarried older pharaonic monuments, transported these magnificent ancient artifacts to Alexandria, and literally recycled them into the fabric of their new Hellenistic wonder.
Why would they do that? Just to save money on stone?
It probably wasn't just practical resourcefulness, though that might have played a part. It was more likely a profoundly sophisticated act of political propaganda. It was a calculated way for the Greek rulers to visually appropriate the 3,000-year legacy of pharaonic power. They were essentially presenting themselves as the legitimate inheritors and continuers of Egypt's ancient glory, legitimacy through association. And this physical evidence, it allowed for an entirely new kind of analysis. Archaeologists could now physically measure block sizes, identify precise stone types, analyze construction techniques. They could directly validate or challenge or completely reinterpret those often vague textual sources that had been the sole basis for study for centuries. Every block tells a part of the story.
And the research continues today, right, with the Pharos project.
Yes, the latest chapter is being written right now. The Pharos Project is an international collaboration led by archaeologist and architect Isabelle Harry of the CNRS France's National Center for Scientific Research, building directly on Emperor's foundational work. This project really represents the next generation. It combines traditional archaeology with the most advanced digital technology available. Just recently, in the summer of 2025, the project team undertook the incredibly complex task of lifting 22 of the most massive and diagnostically important blocks from the seabed. These included colossal door lintels and jambs weighing up to 80 tons, threshold stones, foundational slabs.
Lifting 80-ton blocks from underwater, that sounds incredibly difficult.
Hugely complex engineering feat. And the ultimate impunous goal of the Pharos project is to create a complete, scientifically accurate digital twin of the lighthouse. Every single block, whether lifted or remaining underwater, is being meticulously scanned using high-resolution photogrammetry, creating incredibly precise 3D models from thousands of overlapping photos. This rich data is then given to engineers and specialists who use sophisticated software to virtually manipulate the blocks, like pieces of a giant complex 3D puzzle. This cutting-edge process lets them rigorously test hypotheses about the original construction, the internal structure, even the precise sequence of its collapse during those earthquakes. They're aiming for the most accurate reconstruction ever attempted.
Wow, that really is the ultimate synthesis of ancient texts and modern science. Virtually rebuilding what was lost to understand the whole story like never before. And all these spectacular discoveries, they sparked another idea, didn't they? An underwater museum.
Yes, immediately. The idea of creating an underwater archaeological museum emerged pretty quickly, back in the late 1990s. The concept is to allow visitors to experience these sunken ruins in their original submerged context. A truly immersive historical experience.
How would that even work?
Well, several innovative designs have been put forward. Most notably, a dramatic plan by the visionary French architect Jacques Rougerie. His concept features a land-based museum building connected by a series of submerged fiberglass tunnels. These would gently lead visitors down to the seabed, allowing them to walk, dry among the colossal blocks of the Pharos, the remains of Cleopatra's sunken palace nearby, and thousands of other artifacts lying right there on the seafloor.
That sounds absolutely incredible.
It would be a unique global tourist destination for sure. But it would also serve a crucial purpose, protecting this fragile underwater heritage. It faces threats from pollution, illegal poaching by divers looking for souvenirs, damage from fishing boats. The project has received significant support from UNESCO and the Egyptian government, which is positive. But it has faced numerous delays over the years due to various political and economic instabilities.
So it's still a dream for the future.
For now, yes, the Grand Museum remains a dream. But it is currently possible for licensed scuba divers to visit the site and see the ruins firsthand, though admittedly water visibility in the harbor can be a challenge sometimes. But imagine experiencing history literally immersed in it. This project, even as a concept, ensures that the future of the Pharos' remains is actively considered, continually adding new chapters to its ongoing story.
The enduring legacy of the Pharos.
Okay, so the physical structure of the Pharos is gone. Reduced to rubble, scattered stones, some reused in a fort, others lying underwater. But its profound impact clearly echoes across history. It seems to have shaped our language, influenced architecture, and maybe altered our very concept of human ingenuity. Its light, though physically extinguished centuries ago, you could say it continues to shine brightly in our collective consciousness.
Indeed. The Pharos of Alexandria was nothing short of revolutionary. Now, simple beacon fires on hills have been used for centuries, sure. But the Pharos was the world's very first monumental lighthouse, a purpose-built tower of unprecedented scale, technological sophistication, and architectural ambition. As such, it instantly became the archetype, the fundamental blueprint from which basically all subsequent lighthouses were derived for well over 1,000 years. Its fame was so immense that its design was widely imitated in ports across the Roman Empire and beyond. A notable example is the Roman lighthouse at Dewberry, modern-day Dover in England, which shows clear, direct inspiration from its Alexandrian predecessor.
That's fascinating. So beyond being a blueprint for other lighthouses, what would you say is its most significant, maybe unexpected architectural influence? You mentioned earlier its three-tiered design might have influenced minarets.
Yes, many historians point to that distinctive design, that square base, octagonal middle section, cylindrical top, as a direct model for classic Islamic minarets throughout the Arab world. The evidence is quite compelling. The Arabic word for the lighthouse, al-manara, which literally means place of fire or light, became both linguistically and architecturally linked to the minaret, the tower from which the call to prayer is issued.
Wow, so the name carried over too.
It did. So in this remarkable transformation, the ancient beacon of commerce was symbolically and quite literally transformed into a beacon of faith. It's a powerful example of how foundational innovations can spread, evolve, be reinterpreted, and transform into entirely new forms, serving new purposes across different cultures and eras.
And the influence is so deep, it's actually embedded in our language. That's incredible.
It really is. The structure was built on the island of Pharos, right? It became so inextricably linked with its location that the proper noun, Pharos, actually became the generic noun for any lighthouse in Greek, and then critically, in Latin.
So Pharos just meant lighthouse.
Exactly. And this linguistic legacy survives robustly today in many Romance languages. The word for lighthouse is a direct descendant, fair in French, pharaoh in Italian and Spanish, farol in Portuguese. Furthermore, the modern scientific study of lighthouses and signal lights, it's formally known as phorology, derived directly from the name of the Alexandrian wonder.
Phorology. I never knew that.
It truly makes you think, doesn't it? How often do we use words or see symbols whose origins trace back to something so profound, so ancient, so foundational? The Pharos undeniably lives on in our collective consciousness. It's a testament to its enduring impact.
And as a symbol, beyond language and architecture.
As a symbol, it represents so much. Guidance, obviously. Safety, a beacon of hope leading through treacherous waters. But also knowledge, enlightenment, the shining portal of a great city of learning linked to the library. And of course, as one of the seven wonders, it remains this eternal testament to human ingenuity, ambition, the heights of Hellenistic engineering. Its image still appears everywhere, from ancient Roman coins to modern video games. Outro.
So what does this all really mean for us today? The Lighthouse of Alexandria, it feels like it was far more than just one of the seven wonders. It was this crucible where pharaonic monumentality, Greek rationalism, and pragmatic engineering all fused together into something entirely new. It was a product of its truly unique time and place. A city conceived by a Macedonian conqueror, built by a Greek dynasty on Egyptian soil, all to facilitate global trade. For 16 centuries, it stood as this powerful symbol of an interconnected ancient world, a beacon of welcome that was also a military fortress, a scientific instrument, and a towering icon of power.
And its slow destruction by earthquakes, well, that wasn't the end of its story at all. It merely marked a transformation. The reuse of its stones in the Khatbeh citadel gave it a new life, turning a symbol of international commerce into one of local defense. The meticulous accounts of travelers and historians who saw it in glory and then in ruin, they preserved its memory, creating this textual legacy that's as enduring as its stone foundations. And now, the painstaking work of marine archaeologists, the advanced techniques of digital reconstruction, all these diverse pieces contribute to illuminating the full, nuanced narrative. The light of the Pharos, though physically extinguished centuries ago, is truly being rekindled for our understanding. Every piece of knowledge we gain builds that whole story.
As you reflect on the incredible journey of the Pharos, maybe consider this. If a magnificent structure built millennia ago, pieced together from fragments of ancient text, medieval accounts, and sunken stone, can tell such a complete and still evolving story, what other lost wonders might be waiting out there for us to re-illuminate them? Perhaps just through a new perspective, a fresh piece of evidence, or even just a critical rereading of what we already think we know. The past, it seems, is never truly settled.